Recording. Okay, how's everybody doing this morning? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right, can everybody see my screen? Is that the full screen, Sarah?
So I can see your speaker notes also. So I wonder if that's just me because I'm
Okay.
also a co-host, or if
No, that is something that has happened before. I'll share, I'm going to share my other screen. Okay, how about that?
Yep.
All right.
That is good.
Love technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Having two different monitors. Okay. So anyway, here we are. This is Vaccines 101, learning about COVID-19 vaccines and really how to talk about them with other people. This program is supported by the Office of Minority Health of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and hosted by the Kansas City Health Department. So your speakers today, I'm Lisa Carey. I'm the Senior Health Literacy Writer and Training Manager for Health Literacy Media. Health Literacy Media, or HLM for short, is based in St. Louis, Missouri. And yeah, we're delighted to be here. I've been with HLM for about 8 years now, writing plain language and health literacy content and reviewing and creating trainings. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Valenza. I'm a health and science writer with HLM. I haven't been here quite as long as Lisa. I'm going on about 2 months, but I'm really excited to be here and talk with you guys.
Okay. So before we begin, just a few little housekeeping items. During the training, if you would go ahead, you're all automatically on mute. And we would ask that you stay muted when you're not talking, but certainly, we want for you to participate. So just in the next day or two, we'll be sending you a summary of the most important points and some resources from this training. And then you'll also get a link for a short survey about the training. And for today, there are many ways that you can participate. We invite you to, turn your camera on if you want to. You don't need to, but you can always use the chat box for questions and comments. And then you can unmute yourself to respond or to ask questions at any point. This is highly interactive and it's 1 hour long, so we won't have a break, but welcome and we're glad you've joined us. Let's get started. Okay, so during today's presentation, we're going to cover these topics. First, a conversation between Gianna and Becca. This is kind of a different way that we've set this up so that you all can see an actual conversation between two people talking about COVID-19 vaccines. So we'll talk about what are the different COVID-19 vaccines, are they safe, and why should we get vaccinated? Secondly, we'll talk about kind of the tools for talking about vaccines. Things like focusing on the facts, asking open-ended questions, and helping clients find their own reasons for talking about the vaccines and considering getting them, even if they're, maybe resistant right now. So the first thing that we want to do is ask if you know, how did we get the name COVID-19? So I'm going to launch our first poll. And you should see a little pop-up on your screen so that you can answer. Looks like almost everybody has answered. Let's see. Okay. A few more people. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And here are the results. 93% of the people who responded said that it comes from the name coronavirus. Okay. So that is correct. We'll show you on this next slide. A is the correct response. And so how did we get that name? You can see, so here's the full name, coronavirus disease, basically. And so they took those first green highlighted letters to get COVID, and then it was discovered in 2019. So, and this is just a little illustration of the spike proteins that look like little crowns. They're kind of an odd looking shape. But that's kind of the word corona means crown, and they're little crown-like shapes. COVID is a problem for all of us because it's new. And so we don't know that much. I mean, we're learning a lot about how it affects different people. But some people, as you know, get really sick. Some have no symptoms at all. It spreads very quickly, and different variants of it, which we will talk about later, spread more easily or not. So there's a lot we're still learning, but there is a lot that we know, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So here's our sort of introduction to our characters. We have Gianna and Becca, and Gianna and Becca are going to discuss COVID-19 and vaccines. We're imagining that they're meeting up after Becca's weekly community health class. Gianna is a mom in her 20s. She hasn't been vaccinated yet. She had a mild case of COVID last year. She's not against vaccines exactly, but she definitely still has questions about it. And so then Becca is a health educator at the health department. She works with families and parents in the community. Okay, so here are the top 3 ways that Becca will talk about vaccines. Kind of keep an eye out and see if you can spot examples during their conversation. She's going to focus on the facts about COVID. She will ask open-ended questions and check for their understanding. And open-ended questions are questions that can't just be simply answered with either a short yes or no. They're open-ended. They invite, longer answers, more conversation. And then Becca will help Gianna find her own reasons to get vaccinated. Okay, so here we go.
So I'm gonna play Gianna as we go through this, and Lisa is gonna play Becca. So hi Becca, thanks for the great class. I was wondering if you have a few minutes to chat. I was just talking with my Nana about COVID. And after talking with her, I just don't understand why it's such a big deal that I don't want to get the vaccine.
Hi, Gianna. I'm so happy you asked. I would love to chat. First, you know how I feel about these vaccines. I think it's important for everyone to be up to date on their vaccines if they can. They're very safe. As you probably already know, COVID-19 is a new virus. There's a lot of information out there and it can be confusing. So what questions can I answer?
Well, these vaccines are just too different and new. How do they even work?
That's a great question. Have a seat so we can look at my computer as we talk. Let's start at the beginning. So your immune system is your body's way of fighting off sickness. Everyone gets sick and your immune system helps you get better again. A well-working immune system helps prevent germs from entering your body and then kills them or kind of limits their harm if they do get in. So vaccines like the flu vaccine work with your immune system by giving you a tiny piece of a germ or a version of a germ that's dead or very weak so that your body can learn, or your immune system can learn what the germ looks like and how to fight it off. Now, the COVID vaccines are different, but they're not new. Scientists have been studying them for over 20 years. COVID vaccines don't use a piece of the virus. Instead, they use messenger RNA, which is also called mRNA. They work by giving our body instructions on how to find and fight off the COVID-19 virus. The instructions don't stick around for long. They disappear a couple of days after you're vaccinated. And you may have heard a myth about the vaccines changing your DNA, but our mRNA doesn't even enter the parts of our cells where the DNA is, so it can't change our DNA. Let's take a quick look at a video about this.
Hi, I'm Rupali. I'm an associate scientist at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Today, we're gonna go on an mRNA journey. Let's go!
Let's go.
On this trip, we're going to see how mRNA vaccines work up close. Meet our vaccine recipient, Morgan. They're only 10 years old, so they will only receive half the dose that their parents received. Like their parents, the vaccine will enter into their upper arm muscle. Let's go! Into the bloodstream! The M in mRNA stands for messenger for a reason. It sends a message to your cells to develop something called a spike protein, which is harmless. Let's zoom in here. The cells display the spike protein on their surface. See? Once that process is complete, soon thereafter, your body will remove this spike protein.
You're done. You're done.
Our immune system realizes that the protein does not belong here. Wait a minute. Who are you? So, how long does it camp out for? Not a long time.
And stay out.
This triggers the immune system to produce something called antibodies. Antibodies help the immune system think that there is an infection in your body. Oh, and what COVID tests look for are antibodies. Antibodies do not show up in your immune system until a few days after you have been infected. At the end of this journey, our bodies will have learned how to fight off a future COVID-19 infection. This patient may experience slight discomfort in their arms for a few days. Any side effects that happen after the vaccine will be temporary, and all it means is that your body's system is ready to fight against a real COVID-19 infection. Hi, I'm Rupali. I'm an associate scientist at the Johns Hopkins.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that clears it up a bit. Before we go on with our conversation between Becca and Gianna, what questions do you have? Does anyone have questions that kind of about the video that we just saw? Okay, I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions here. And this is just another reminder while we're pausing here. If you haven't yet, go ahead and put your name in the chat, just so we know afterwards kind of who attended. So thank you. All right, let's keep going here. Okay, hopefully that clears it up a bit. So the vaccine kind of pops in to help your body find the COVID virus if you get it, and then it's back out of our system. And now our body is ready to fight off COVID so we don't get seriously sick or need the hospital if we get COVID. Kind of cool, right? What else is on your mind today?
Well, yeah, that's good to know. But I also heard the vaccine makes you sick and can actually give you COVID. I really don't want to be sick and miss work.
Yeah, I totally understand being worried about getting sick and missing work or the other things that you have to do every day. Remember that the COVID vaccines don't have pieces of the virus that can make you sick, so it cannot give you COVID. There's no real virus in the vaccine, so you can't get COVID. And so, yeah, this is kind of Becca focusing on the facts. Some people do have side effects from the vaccine, but not everyone. First, let's look at the most common side effects. These usually go away within a few days after getting your vaccine. They include fever, headache, and overall soreness in your body or usually just in the arm where you got your shot. So, okay. That was a lot of information. I want to check in to be sure I'm explaining it well. Can you tell me if the RNA COVID vaccines contain pieces of the virus that could make you sick with COVID? Let's see, and this is going to be another poll. Whoops. Sorry about that. I'm trying to launch this poll. Here it is. Okay. All right, here's another poll. Okay. Two more people need to answer. Okay. Ta-da. 100% of you said no, the mRNA does not contain pieces of the virus. So, all right. Good job, everybody. Okay.
Well, I'm still concerned because the vaccines are new, that they were new and rushed.
Yes, this is a common myth out there. It sounds like you're worried that the vaccines are too new to be safe. Am I understanding correctly? This is Becca kind of making sure to check her understanding of what Jana is saying.
Yes, they couldn't possibly make a new vaccine that fast and be sure that it's safe.
You know, I understand that feeling. It is amazing that scientists were able to get us these vaccines when we needed them. The truth is, they're very safe. There's a lot of false information out there, like that they were rushed. But these mRNA vaccines are not new. They've been studied since the 1990s. Plus, the vaccines were fully studied and reviewed by medical experts. So America's leading experts agree that they're safe. So let me show you a picture of how vaccines are made and how the COVID vaccine follows those same safety steps. So in the kind of brown bar there, you can see this is the typical vaccine development process. They start with the research and the preclinical trials. Preclinical trials test the vaccines in tissue and in animals before moving on to people in the next step. So in the next step, they move on to clinical trials in people, which have 3 different phases. Clinical trials are research studies designed to learn how our bodies respond to medicines or other treatments. They help doctors find out if studied drugs, either alone or with other treatments, are safe, and if they can prevent, find, or treat a disease. The clinical trials start with a small number of people, and each stage introduces more people. After the clinical trials, the vaccine makers submit their data to the Food and Drug Administration, who we know as the FDA, and then they have a group of experts review it. If the vaccine is authorized or approved, the vaccine makers move on to manufacturing and distribution. And the final step is kind of this ongoing safety monitoring or checking that, you know, of kind of side effects or safety, any safety problems in the general population. So you'll notice that in the turquoise or aqua bar there, that's the COVID vaccine development process. And the difference is that manufacturing started before clinical trials. Those steps were nearly happening together at the same time. The FDA was working to inspect facilities while the clinical trials were ongoing, which allowed for manufacturing to begin and move forward quickly. So I have another video. Let's watch this video about how the COVID vaccine was made.
The COVID-19 vaccine development and approval process in the US. First, did you know that scientists have been working on a coronavirus vaccine for more than 20 years? Like all vaccines, COVID vaccines went through 3 clinical trial phases. Usually the phases are performed one at a time, but because of the pandemic, these phases overlapped. More than 70,000 Americans participated in COVID vaccine trials. All clinical trial data were reviewed by the Food and Drug Administration, and those vaccines that met the FDA's rigorous safety and effectiveness standards were granted emergency use authorizations to get vaccines to the American public as quickly as possible. COVID vaccines were then granted full approval from the FDA after an extensive review of safety and effectiveness data. COVID vaccines were manufactured and distributed, and because of the urgency, there were huge investments in manufacturing and distribution. COVID vaccines are tracked through several national safety monitoring systems. Millions of people in the U.S. have received COVID vaccines under the most intense safety monitoring in U.S. history. So to recap, scientists have been working on coronavirus vaccines for 20 plus years. All approved COVID vaccines went through the full clinical trial process. All COVID vaccines were reviewed by the FDA for safety and effectiveness. And millions of COVID vaccines have been administered under the most intense safety monitoring in U.S. history.
Okay. All right. Once again, that was a lot of information. Can you tell me how many clinical trial phases the vaccines went through? And here is, let's see. Sorry, now we're going to do the next poll. There we go. Okay. All right. I think I'll go ahead and end this poll. Looks like everybody who wants to answer has answered. Okay. Correct answer was 3. And so there we go. All right. Good job, everybody. Let's see. The vaccines went through the full 3 phases of clinical trials before the general public could get it, just like all the other vaccines and medicines. And they were reviewed and approved by our country's experts on medicines and vaccines. So you can see here in this little graphic how phase 1 starts out with kind of a small number of people, and then phase 2 and phase 3, there are more and more and more. Phase 3, it literally has thousands of people in it.
Well, okay, so the vaccines might be safe, but why should I get vaccinated if I already had COVID?
I can understand why it would seem like getting COVID means you're protected. But unfortunately, scientists don't know how long your protection lasts after having COVID. Getting the vaccine, even if whether you've had COVID or not, getting the vaccine lowers your chances of getting very sick, having to go to the hospital, and having long-term side effects from the virus, and also lowers your chances of dying. So according to the CDC, people who have had COVID but didn't get vaccinated afterwards are more likely to get COVID again compared to those who did get vaccinated.
Yeah, my Nana was hospitalized last year from COVID. She has diabetes and she hadn't had her vaccine yet. She really wants me to get vaccinated. That's what we were talking about before I came to this class.
I'm sure that was scary for her to be in the hospital and scary for you too. People with certain health conditions like diabetes do have a higher chance of getting really sick from COVID. It sounds like your Nana wants you to be vaccinated to keep you from getting really sick.
Yes, I know she just cares about me and is nervous. Oh, I have one last question. What about variants? I heard the virus is changing, so the vaccines don't work now anyway.
That's a really good question. Yes, variants are happening, but this is normal and expected. Let's look at this. So as viruses spread and make copies of themselves, they change over time into new versions. But the good news is that vaccines are still working to keep people from getting really sick from these new versions or variants. Staying up to date on your vaccines makes the protection against variants even better. This is why it's important to get vaccine boosters when they're recommended. Slowing the spread of the virus by protecting yourself and others can help slow the creation of new variants because it gives the virus sort of less opportunity to duplicate and change. Okay, just for fun, can you name which variant we haven't had yet? Okay. Here's another poll. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end poll, share the results. Yeah, most of you said Zeta, that is the correct answer. A few people answered Alpha, and I can see why, because they didn't actually, that wasn't in the news at the time. That would have been the first type of the coronavirus. Because variants are named after the Greek alphabet in alphabetical order, and Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet. Luckily, we have not reached Zeta yet, because that would be, I think there are, 25 letters in the Greek alphabet. So hopefully we won't get to Zeta. Okay. All right. Jenna, I hope this was helpful for you. Before you go, I'm curious what you're thinking. What are some reasons you might get vaccinated now?
Well, I guess I understand now that the vaccines were well tested. And I have little kids, and like I said, my Nana has diabetes, and my aunt is also going through cancer treatments. I really don't want to get them sick.
It sounds like you're thinking about how getting your vaccine can protect the people you love. I'm glad you're thinking about it. And thanks for coming to me with your great questions. Oh, and before you go, earlier I mentioned being up to date on your vaccines. Here's a little sheet on recommended vaccines and boosters. Talk this over with your family. Most people should get 2 doses a few weeks apart, plus a booster 5 months later. And this is me, Lisa, talking. I just saw yesterday that, or maybe it was this morning, that now the FDA is recommending that people age 50 and over go ahead and get a second booster shot. 50 and over, and I think people with weakened immune systems. Okay, so now Sarah is going to talk about sort of how Becca discussed vaccines.
So like Lisa said, we're going to review how Becca talked to Gianna about the vaccines. So first, she really focused on the facts about COVID. She asked open-ended questions and checked for understanding. And she helped Gianna to find her own reasons to get vaccinated. So when she was focusing on facts, you can kind of think of it as a truth sandwich. So you start with the truth, you explain the untruth or the concern they have, and then you return to the truth. So can any of you, feel free to drop it in the chat, remember a time when Becca did this with Gianna in the conversation? Go ahead and let us know in the chat or unmute yourself if you would like to. Wait just a minute and then yeah, there we go. So someone said getting COVID from the vaccine, myth about it being rushed. Awesome. Yeah, so next we'll move on to the example from Becca. So the underlying misinformation or the concern was that the vaccine was rushed and therefore it can't be safe. Becca validates the feelings of the vaccines moving fast by saying, I understand that feeling. It is amazing that scientists were able to get us these vaccines when we needed them. Then she leads with a fact by saying, the truth is they're very safe. She then restated that misinformation or that concern. There's a lot of false information out there, like that they were rushed. Then she gave a warning and explained why that information is false by saying, but these vaccines called mRNA vaccines are not new. They've been studied since the early 1990s. Plus, the vaccines were thoroughly studied and reviewed by medical experts. Last, she ends with the truth. So, America's leading experts agree they're safe. And just as we mentioned, open-ended questions are questions that invite more than a simple yes or no. They really invite a conversation. So it might sound like, I would like to understand your concerns. Can you tell me more about why you're not sure or don't want to get the vaccine? The person you're talking to can start opening up instead of just replying that yes or no. So here are a few examples. Instead of saying, do you have any questions? You could say, what questions do you have for me?
Yeah, do you see the difference there? Do you have any questions? Is just they could answer with a no. And studies show that 8 times out of 10, if you ask someone do you understand or do you have any questions, they don't want to appear like they don't understand, that they don't want to feel dumb or kind of confess that there are things that they didn't understand. So they will answer no to this question. And so, yeah, that's why it's so much better to ask it, what questions do you have for me? Because you're letting them know that you expect them to have questions.
So another, instead of saying, don't you know it's important don't you know that getting vaccinated is important? You could say, what are your concerns about getting the vaccine? So again, kind of flipping that to prompt them to bring their concerns forward. And again, kind of how Lisa was saying, does that make sense? Instead of saying that, you could ask, what can I help to explain? Again, kind of giving that expectation that you are going to have questions and that we're here to explain. So here's an example for Becca's conversation with Gianna. She says, and now our body is too ready to fight off COVID so we don't get seriously sick or need the hospital. Pretty cool, right? And then she asks, what else is on your mind today? So she's helping to keep that conversation open and helping to keep it going. Okay, so we're going to have another pop-up Zoom quiz with some example questions. Please choose the ones that are open-ended.
Okay, let's see here. Here we go. Okay.
And it's multiple choice, so you can pick all that apply. Awesome, you see lots of answers coming in.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so the open-ended questions were the first one and the last one. So what questions can I answer? And what else have you heard about the COVID vaccines?
Mhm.
A few people did answer, do you feel worried about how safe the vaccines are? But that's a little closed-ended. Someone could just say, no, I'm not worried, or yeah, I'm worried. And that kind of closes the conversation down a little bit.
Okay. So, great.
Okay, so lastly, Becca helped Gianna consider her own reasons for getting vaccinated. So in the chat, if you are vaccinated, what are some of your reasons and how have you helped others find their own reasons? Or how will you help others find their own reasons in the future? Feel free to drop it in the chat, or if you want to, you can unmute yourself as well. Using open-ended questions and stating the facts. It's awesome. So Taylor said, I got vaccinated because it's the right thing to do. I wanted to protect my friends, family, community, and myself. What plans do you have in place to keep your family safe? That's a great question. Vaccinated because family member has underlying health conditions that would make a COVID-19 infectious very dangerous. Great. These are awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit. Patricia said, I got vaccinated because I'm a poster child for COVID. I'm over 60, Latina, overweight. I want to keep my family and friends and coworkers safe. Yeah, so you have that awareness of what some of the factors that can make it even a little more dangerous to have COVID. I did want to go back. Tamika said, can we go back to the last slide? And I'm sorry, I didn't see that when it came in. Tamika, can you let us know what slide that was that you wanted to go back to?
I forgot the information that was on the slide, but it was basically talking about questions and answers for a scenario where you may be having a conversation. It was maybe like 3 slides.
Okay, so kind of near the true sandwich of explaining, you know, here's the concern, here's how you address it. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, this one here.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Will the slides be shared after the meeting?
We're not going to share the slide deck with you, but this is being recorded so that you can go back and look at this. I'm not sure how long it will take to put it up online, but and we will have, we'll send you a summary of the most important points. I'm not sure that this whole page would be on there, but yeah, there will be.
Yeah, I think this example actually might be on that summary. So
Oh, good.
yeah, we should be good there.
Oh, good. Great. Does that answer your question, Tamika?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. We'll just go back to where we were. Okay, so we were here and people had really good things in
Yeah.
the chat.
Those were some really good reasons. And so before we move on to our resources to learn more, what questions can we answer for you about how to talk about vaccines, about COVID vaccines? What can we answer for you before we move on? Or if you have any thoughts, feel free to
Right.
share those as well.
I'd be interested to know sort of with the clients that you work with, you know, at this point in the pandemic, when some of the mask mandates or most of the mask mandates have gone away, are you still having clients who are expressing concern about getting the vaccine or the boosters, or sort of what is the word on the street that you're hearing?
This is Tamika Booker. I work with the PHN program, which is the Pandemic Health Navigator program, and I'm a supervisor over CHWs. And in my conversations with the community, within the community, over the phone, whether it's with the health department, those who have been exposed to COVID-19, or just conversations on in the community with people of the community, a lot of people either don't get the vaccine just because they don't have enough information, so they're not informed, or they don't know what to do, so they do nothing. So I kind of asked them, what is your plan? And that's kind of why I took the vaccine, because I didn't have a plan in place. So this was a plan, and so I kind of asked that question a lot, what is your plan? If you're not getting the vaccine, how are you protecting your family and friends? I'm sure everyone at this point have had someone, whether it was their immediate family or someone that they knew who's been affected by COVID-19 and got really sick or passed away. So that's usually my question. And that's usually what the concern is that they don't know what to do, so they do nothing.
Yeah, I love how you said, do you have a plan, or what is your plan? Because that really makes them think about what would they do, or how are they protecting themselves? That's a really good open-ended question to prompt.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Tamika. So I'm seeing in the chat too, some people say they already had COVID, so their own immunity is enough. No need for a vaccine. Yeah. Annette says the people I hear are done with it and just want to get on with their life as it used to be. Yeah, there's so much just fatigue around this. Patricia says, I hear clients talk about the barriers they have faced, including transportation issues, not finding enough information because they do not have access to online, or their family of origin do not find it necessary and they follow their family. Yeah, these are all reasons that there are so many reasons not to get the vaccine. But yeah, so the barriers are, I know everybody's been, probably you all have been working really hard for the past 2 years trying to take down some of those barriers to vaccination. And it's been hard, but when you think about how much your work has meant and how many people have been vaccinated, it's going to be very interesting to see how this keeps playing out. Let's hope that there's not another big variant. it almost sounds like it's going to become something where we get boosters every year. Kind of like the flu vaccine, but
I see that Kat mentioned people are frustrated with the idea of getting another booster. Suggestions to keep vaccinated people up to date on their boosters. And I think that's a really great point. From what I've read, there is a new level of hesitancy every time you add on another recommendation because things are changing. We're still so, it's hard to think about, but we're still kind of early in that pandemic process of knowing how many boosters are eventually going to come out, how many we'll need every year. So I really think it's just focusing on those facts of what we do know is really going to be a good tool for people. Like how we mentioned, you're more protected against variants if you're up to date with your vaccines and all your boosters. So that's a really good fact you can focus on.
let's see.
A couple more
there's some
comments coming in.
Yeah. So it looks like this is Patricia again. My great niece's parents are anti-vaxxers and ridiculed and made fun of her when she found out how and where to get a vaccine and asked her grandmother to transport her to the local health department for the vaccines. She's 16 years old. Wow. So did she end up getting the vaccine, Patricia? Curious.
Hi, yes, she did get the vaccine. She lives in Michigan, and I believe the age is 14. You can get a vaccine without parental permission. And she wanted to get the vaccine. She asked her teacher about, what happens, and the teacher gave her, her school teacher gave her some resources online to look up. And then she called her great aunt, who is my partner, and said, doesn't PJ work at the health department? And so then I got on the phone and talked to her and looked online, and we found out where she could go. And then her grandmother took her to get the vaccines. And she, her parents are strong anti-vaxxers. They were just ridiculing her and kind of making fun of her. And she told them, look, I'm 16. I'm responsible for my body. I know you're my parents, but I'm responsible for myself, and I want to do this, and it's important to me.
Wow.
Smart kid.
Yeah, that takes courage to kind of stand up to your parents on that. And thank goodness she had you as a resource and her teacher and your partner to help her learn how to get it. And get there, and her grandmother to take her. That is really powerful.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Annette had said, I had one person state to me that if they got their pet 3 rabies shots and they still got rabies, that they would have an issue with that. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of relating it to other vaccine series, and I think it's hard for people to grasp that no vaccines are 100%. It's not something I think we're really used to thinking about in our everyday lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if we do talk about it in terms of comparing it with the flu vaccine, I know there are a lot of people who don't get their flu shot every year. Or they get their flu shot and they still get the flu, but it's just kind of mitigating or lowering your risk of getting it. And if you do get it, hopefully it's not as bad. So it's kind of a shame that the COVID vaccines have become so politicized because the flu vaccines aren't politicized, or they weren't. So, yeah, Allison says it takes a village. Let's see, somebody else, Credmo, says, I heard someone say, why do I need a second booster? Are they saying the first booster did not work? Yeah, and to this, Sarah and I are not scientists, but yeah, I would just say they're learning
Mhm.
as fast as they can.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, there are other vaccines where we do need to get up to date, like the Tdap vaccine, you know, during pregnancy, all of that. So it's not necessarily a new concept. It's just a concept that a lot of people are not familiar with, or if you're exposed, getting a tetanus booster. So again, it's a natural, I don't want to say natural, it's a normal concept that immunity would wane over time. But we're definitely, like Lisa said, the scientists are still learning, and that'll probably take a little bit of time.
Good questions. We still have a few more minutes if anybody would like to unmute and, have a discussion. I would be interested to know where you all work too, like what organizations you work for. If you would put that in the chat, just out of curiosity, sort of, so we can see sort of who you're working with. Okay, Health Department, Nebraska Association of Local Health Directors, Latino Marketing Agency.
Very cool.
Yeah. Affinia. HIV services. Yeah. Cool.
Well, our next, just last thing we wanted to cover were resources to learn more. So kind of helping you identify some credible resources that you can look at or that you can share with clients or people that you love. So of course, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, we talked about ongoing safety monitoring. One of those programs is called vSafe. It's a monitoring system through CDC where they're checking on individuals who are vaccinated with the COVID vaccines. Anybody can sign up and get automatic, they're kind of like texts sent to you, and you go in and just check if you've had any side effects. Kansas City Health Department obviously is a wonderful resource. And then we also have the link for the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services and the COVID vaccine website for them as well.
And these resources will be in the summary that we emailed to you.
Yeah. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. You can send an email to healthiq@kcmo.org. You can connect on social media with the Kansas City Health Department or with Health Literacy Media. We're always open to chat and answer questions. Our next seminar that we're going to be talking about is clearly communicating numbers and risk. So that should be a really good one. And then I think our next slide also shows the ones coming up after that. So considering culture and health communication, and then social media best practices. So we really look forward to bringing those to you as well. We hope you tune in. If anybody has any last minute questions, I think we got 2 minutes left, so we'll hang out if you have any questions. But Lisa, is there anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Let's see. Somebody said, hello, Lisa, you've mentioned that this recording will be posted. How will we get to that recording? And is there a way we can get notified when it's being posted? Sarah, do you know that, or is there someone from KCHD that can answer that? Okay.
Yeah, so there will be an email that goes out, a follow-up email, and it should have that information in there as well. So you should get an email as long as you register for the training.
Great. And we do just want to mention again, when we send the email to you in the next couple of days with the summary, there will also be a link in there for a very short survey for you to take just about the training and maybe other topics that you want to see. And we'll make sure that you get these dates for the upcoming seminars as well. Okay.
When I will check on that for you, I'll check in with our partners and see if that's a possibility. I think it is, but I want to double check before I say yes. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for taking an hour of your morning to be with us, and we will see you next month, hopefully.
Yeah. Have a good week.